Welcome to sj'sclasses, everyone. I hope all of you are safe and that you are taking all the necessary precautions against the second wave of this global pandemic that has been troubling the world in general since December 2019. I would like to reiterate the statements made by the health officials. Please do practice social distancing and also use mask, sanitizer, and soap whenever and wherever necessary. Thereby protect yourself and also your family. If you're here for the first time, I would like to request you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's mostly video lessons related to literature that I upload on my channel, but I also upload video lessons related to technology and other matters of importance at times. It's a poem by a Nigerian poet that I will try to interpret for you today. The name of the poet is Gabriel Okara, and the poem is You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed. Here is a sneak peek into the author's biography. Gabriel Imomotimi Okara was a Nigerian poet and novelist. He is known as one of the founders of modern African literature and was also one of the chief reasons for increased attention towards African literature along with other African writers. He was born on April 21st, 1921, and he died on March 25, 2019. He is best known for his early experimental novel, which is titled The Voice. It was published in 1964, and he used this particular novel to comment about the political situation in Nigeria since the British rule had just left Nigeria. One of his other award winning poetry is The Fisherman's Invocation, which was published in 1978, and also The Dreamer, His Vision, which came out in 2005. After his first poem, The Call of the River Nun, won an award at the Nigerian Festival of Arts in 1953, several of his poems were featured in the Nigerian literary journal Black Orpheus, and this particular journal was an influential journal which was an Ibadan University based African literature periodical. His later work includes two books for children titled Little Snake and Little Frog that came out in 1981 and An Adventure to Juju Island which came out in 1992. Okara is very much concerned with what happens when the ancient culture of Africa confronts modern Western culture. He has traced this theme in many of his works like Once Upon a Time, which is a poem, and The Voice, which is a novel. He has also won numerous awards during his long writing career. One of the early awards that he received was a Best All Around Award at the Nigerian Festival of Arts for his poem The Call of the River Nun that happened in 1953. Another award that he received was for his book The Fisherman Invocation, for which he won the Commonwealth Joint Poetry Award in 1979. He has also won the highest honors, which is one among the highest honors, which is the NLNG Nigeria Prize for Literature in 2005, and he won it for his book The Dreamer. Now, here is an introduction to the poem that I am about to interpret today. It's titled You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed. This poem is one of the most popular in his literary oeuvre. It brings out the emotions, feelings, and pain experienced by the Africans. The poem, the poet titled the poem as You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed because in this poem he depicts how the Africans were laughed and mocked at by the whites. The poem establishes profound connections with African populace in general, their mannerisms, their language, way of life, culture, tradition, society, dance, rhythm, as well as their musical beats. It's in the form of an interaction that takes place between a white colonialist and a native person of Africa. And the poem ends by making the white realize that Africans still have their thoughts and that they are not primitives. The poem, in its totality, consists of 10 stanzas and it describes the interplay of different interpretations of the same sounds, sights, and dances. You'll understand all these statements made by me in a better manner once you have read the poem. So let's go to the poem. In your ears, my song is motor car misfiring, stopping with a choking cough, and you laughed and laughed and laughed. So, as I said earlier, the very title shows how the Africans were looked down by the whites and how they were frequently, mocked and laughed at by the whites. That's why Okara has, stressed on that particular word, laughed. You laughed and laughed and laughed. So he says in the first stanza, in your ears my song is motor car misfiring. Misfiring means fail to start or turn off in between. And he continues, stopping with a choking cough, and you laughed and laughed and laughed. So what Okara does in this particular stanza is he describes the whites' attitude towards the African songs. The songs were part of the Africans' life and culture, but the whites gave no value to it. For them, it was nothing but something like a car misfiring. And he describes it as the sound that comes when a car due to the misfiring, when it comes to a choking cough. You know how the car comes to a halt when it has some sort of an engine problem. So he criticizes the whites' attitude towards their songs, the Africans' songs, and for them it was nothing but a car misfiring. In your eyes, my antenatal walk was inhuman, passing your omnivorous understanding, and you laughed and laughed and laughed. In your eyes, my antenatal walk was inhuman. Probably it's the image of a pregnant woman walking that is being picturized here. And the poet or the speaker says that in your eyes, my antenatal walk was inhuman, without any human feelings. Probably we appeared as people who were without any feelings. That is what is probably described by the poet here. And he says, passing your omnivorous understanding. Omnivorous understanding means understanding about everything around. So that was your kind of understanding regarding us, that we are people without any human feelings. And you laughed and laughed and laughed. So the speaker says again, you continuously laughed. The very postures or gestures of the Africans were ridiculed, or yeah, they were ridiculed by the whites. You laughed at my song, you laughed at my work. So the poet kind of summarizes what he said in the previous two stanzas at this particular point. He says, you laughed at my song, you laughed at my walk. Then I danced my magic dance to the rhythm of talking drums pleading, but you shut your eyes and laughed and laughed and laughed. Then I danced my magic dance. So their dance was, something that seemed to be very much magical. And they danced to the rhythm of talking drums pleading. The kind of sync was attained between the music and the dance, and the entire act pleaded for a look. But what did the whites do? They shut their eyes to it, and as usual, they laughed and laughed at it. And then I opened my mystic inside, white like the sky. Instead, you entered your car and laughed and laughed and laughed. And then I opened my mystic inside, which is wide like the sky. Probably, the heart of the land is being described here. And the heart of the land, the African space, was something which evoked awe or wonder. And what did the whites do? Instead, you entered your car and laughed and laughed and laughed. So instead of taking a look at the wonder that the land offered, the whites chose to leave. And then what did you do? They laughed, or you laughed and laughed and laughed. You laughed at my dance, you laughed at my inside, you laughed and laughed and laughed. So the poet says, or the speaker says, you laughed at everything, our song, ourselves, our inside, our walk, our dance, our music, and everything that was in us. You just kept on mocking at our culture and heritage, everything which made us. But your laughter was ice block laughter, and it froze your inside, froze your voice, froze your ears, froze your eyes, and froze your tongue. So you laughed at everything, but your laughter was ice block. You lost your warmth in this particular process. You became cold as ice blocks. Your voice, your ears, your eyes, your tongue, your heart, everything became cold in this particular process. And now it's my turn to laugh. But my laughter is not ice block laughter, for I know not cars, nor not ice blocks. So a kind of comparison is made here between how the whites see the Africans and how the Africans perceive the whites. The speaker says that the Africans, they do not know what luxury is. They are not generally materialistic, and therefore they have a very friendly heart. They have a warmth in their heart which prevents them from being cold at heart, unlike the Americans or unlike the whites. Sorry. My laughter is the fire of the eye of the sky, the fire of the earth, the fire of the air, the fire of the seas, and the rivers, fishes, animals, trees, and it thawed your inside, thawed your voice, thawed your ears, thawed your eyes, and thawed your tongue. The poet then compares their laughter or states that their laughter is like the sun, which is being described here as the eye of the sky, and also probably the intensity of the sun is being compared there, probably. And also their laughter is like the fire of the earth, which is one of the elements, and also their laughter is like the fire of the air, which is probably the lightning, the fire that you find in every being and entity that's around you, like seas, rivers, fishes, animals, trees, etc. The poet further says that the intensity of this fire, thawed means softened or made into liquid. Now they were considered as their laugh or their heart were considered as ice blocks, and our laugh, which was like the eye of the sky or the fire of the earth or the fire of the air, it thawed that particular ice block which their hearts were. So this fire thawed or softened or made into liquid your ice block kind of voice, ears, eyes, and tongue. Meaning, now seeing their real passionate selves, the whites soften their attitude. So a meek wonder held your shadow and you whispered, "Why so?" And I answered, "Because my father and I are owned by the living warmth of the earth through our naked feet." So finally, let's see how the poet concludes this particular poem. The poet says that the whites wondered about the reasons behind the passionate and warm selves of the Africans, and they silently searched for answers to the question, why is it so? The poet gives them the answer that it's because they and their ancestors were and are owned by the living warmth of the earth. It's probably Mother Earth that is being referred to here, and he says that this has been given to them by Mother Earth. This quality of warmth or being friendly, and it's because they are part of nature. All these qualities were attributed to them by Mother Earth. They absorbed the values through their naked feet, which was in close communion with Mother Earth. So finally, the poet wounds up by saying that they have lived in close communion with nature. They have absorbed all these values from the nature. It's not just them, but also their ancestors who had been living in close relation with nature, and that's why the whites had to change their attitude towards the Africans. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a nice day. I'll see you in another video lesson.